Good morning, River City Church. If you guys want to grab a seat, we are going to keep things moving here. I can't even start without looking at people and smiling and laughing. Okay, welcome. I'm so excited to share with you guys. Yeah, I am. There's a lot of things that I get to do. My name is Melissa, by the way, if you don't know me. I'm a member at River City Church, and I've been here for a while, and I've worn a lot of hats, but I have to say that this is my favorite church. It is an honor, and it is truly a pleasure to get up here and be able to share with you, especially as we kick off the Advent season. And I feel like there is no better way for us to kick off the Advent season than a really embarrassing story, right? I feel like it's kind of a thing where if I come and I speak, somehow God's always like, hey, remember that horrible, awkward thing that happened to you that you never wanted to tell anybody about? How about you share it with the church? And so we're gonna start doing that this morning as we talk about hope. At a situation that seemed sort of hopeless a couple times along the way. And so I'm just going to dig right into it this morning before we get into the passage. So in a past life, my husband Kevin was in a band. And this band, for a couple years, traveled and toured really all over the world. And, they did festivals, late night, the whole thing. And when I was able to, I went to go visit him. And it would look like just kind of flying into somewhere, hanging out for a little while, and then flying back. And there was this one particular trip that I took, and I still am like, can't believe I'm going to tell you guys this. It was 2008, so this was a while ago. And they were doing a couple shows in the UK, and then they were going to go off to Europe. And so I flew into London, and I hung out for a little bit. And the plan was that the morning that they were getting ready to go to Europe, I was going to take a train, I was going to go back to London from, I don't even know, maybe Liverpool, wherever we were, somewhere at the top of England. It was a long time ago. And then I was going to get a plane and just fly back to the States. And everything seemed perfect. And so, and it was a fine trip. Everything was great. We had a plan. And I went to sleep, and everything was fine. And then I wake up in the middle of the night, and it is very apparent that everything is not fine. I wake up, and I am cold, and I'm clammy, but I'm sweating at the same time. And you remember like all those tornadoes and storms that happened last night? That's kind of what it was feeling like in this general intestinal region. Yeah, we're gonna go there on Advent Hope morning. And so I spend the next, 8-10 hours in one of three positions. I am sitting on the toilet, I am leaned over the toilet, or I am laying in the fetal position in front of the toilet. And that is it, and I do not sleep. And morning comes, and every person that I know and that I was with, they leave. They go to Europe, and I am still there. And it becomes apparent. Three things become very apparent. I have missed my train. I have absolutely no hope of getting my flight, and never again will I eat a raw oyster, which is true to this day. I cannot stomach them. A roasted oyster from Orsay, give me those all day, but raw, I will not do. And here's the thing, at some point, I fall asleep on the floor, and I wake up, and it's feeling pretty hopeless. Like, this is 2008. And so in 2008, when you miss your train, you don't take out your iPhone and figure out where the next one is. You don't go to the Delta app and just go to the next, next flight, whatever. In 2008, I had a Nokia. Did anybody have a Nokia? That is not what you want to put your hope in when you're by yourself on the floor in a foreign country and you don't know how you're going to get home, okay? Did anybody have that phone? Yes, thank you. Okay, you guys remember. Okay, so I wake up, and I have to tell you honestly, there's not a lot about what happens after this that I remember. It is a blur. But I know that I cannot stay there. Like, I know that I have to get out of that situation. And so, I kind of gather my stuff. Somehow I get to the train station. I have no memory of how that happened. And I hope that once I get there, I'll show up and that there'll be somebody there. And they'll say, yes, there's another train coming and you can get on it. And I'll hope that my little 2008 debit card from America works. And when it doesn't, I'll hope that the man at the counter will tell me I can walk half a mile into town to the ATM, where I will probably charge maybe $100 in fees to get money out of Jacksonville to get pounds so I can pay for my plane or my train ticket in cash. And then I'll hope when I get on the train, right, which I also don't remember the train ride at all. I did get to the airport. I do know that. And I just kind of walk up and I'm just like, hey, here's my Nokia. Can I get on another flight? I was supposed to be here about 8 hours ago. Like, I don't know, for those of you who have spent some time over there, Americans don't have a great reputation. It's a surprise, but just as soon as you open your mouth, they kind of don't like you sometimes, because there's a reputation of being kind of loud and rude and not really caring to what's going on with other people. So as this kind of young girl who shows up, I'm like, I didn't feel good, and so I missed my train. Can I get on another one? Like, they kind of treated me like that American that they assumed that I was. And same at the airport when I show up, and I was like, I was supposed to be here 8 hours ago. Can you still get me home? Do I have to pay more? And so I just feel like I was being treated. I felt horrible. I couldn't eat anything. I was weak. It was kind of a nightmare situation, and I was not being treated very well. I was being treated like a foreigner in a foreign country who had no idea how they were really going to get home. It worked out, huh? It's a good thing, too. This would have been a different story if it didn't. All that to say, the reason that I'm sharing this situation and this really unpleasant story with you guys is that a lot can change in one day. I went to sleep and I felt fine. But by the time I woke up in the middle of the night, everything was like a hot mess, right? All of my plans completely out of the window, and I had to just completely pivot of what was happening. And so the passage that we're going to look at today, it's similar. The stakes are so much higher than like a train or bad oysters. But what happens in this passage is that at night, everything seems fine. And in the middle of the night, by the middle of the night, it is apparent that everything is very much not fine. And so we're going to pick up, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of backstory. We're going to pick up in Matthew 2. And this is kind of picking up after the whole birth of Jesus story. This is like the whole nativity story. And we're picking up where the wise men come in. And we can read it right here. This is after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." And so I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to kind of read all of it. It's big, and so I'm going to paraphrase some. But what happens next is Herod, after receiving these wise men, it says he's deeply troubled. Because Herod, as far as he knows, is currently the king of the Jews. So if these guys are coming to worship the king of the Jews, and it's obviously not him because they're asking where they are, then it kind of makes him a little nervous. Gets a little twitchy inside. But it says that after Herod has kind of consulted his scribes and his priests, he sends the wise men out to Bethlehem, where he thinks that this king of the Jews might be. But he tells them, hey, when you find him, why don't you come back and tell me where he is, because I really want to worship him too, which is a lie. By the way, he does not want to do that. And so the wise men go back out, the star comes back out, it leads them to Jesus, where it says that they fell down, they worshiped him, and they present him with these gifts. And this is where, but before they leave, they also have this dream, saying, hey, don't go back to Herod, just go home a different way. And so we're going to pick back up there, and we're going to pick up in verse 13. It says, now when they had departed, they being the wise men from Jesus, it says, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This is to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." Then Herod, when he saw that he'd been tricked by the wise men, became furious. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem, and in all the region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Yeah, Advent, hope. Listen, Jesus, Joseph, and Mary probably went to sleep that night feeling like things were going to work out pretty well. Jesus' birth, if you remember, Mary's pregnancy was a little unconventional, if you want to say that. But at this point, things seem to have fallen into place, especially with this very unexpected visit from these wise men. I feel like traditionally the way that we see that is like those 3 men on the camels, like going through the deserts. But it would have been much more like this mini kind of caravan. These were important men, and they would have come with some attendants and other people with them. And they wouldn't have come for like a nugget to give Jesus, like, here's your little nugget, here's your 1 bottle of essential oils and your other bottle of essential oils. Like, these were a substantial gift that they were coming to give him. It was kind of a really big deal. They had been waiting for kind of these signs, and so they were ready to go. And so after all the kind of craziness, you could say, about the birth, it looks like, okay, this is more what I was thinking when we had those whole angel dream things about having the Son of God. This is pretty nice, right? So they go to sleep with that, and then in the middle of the night, I just imagine Joseph like having that same like wake up, like sweating yet cold, like not in the stomach feeling, and just like, I don't know. It's like everything was fine, and then all of a sudden nothing is fine. And I want to give a little context of just some historical context of what the culture kind of looked like then. This is under the time where the Roman Empire was just like in charge of almost everything. And it was the Roman emperor or empire who would just basically decide who was in charge of all the different areas. So they would appoint the kings, the governors, all the people that would rule over everyone else. And Herod is someone who has been appointed by the Roman Empire to be in charge. And Herod historically is known as Herod the Great because Judea did prosper under him. He did some things. He was known as a builder, but the guy was crazy. He was unstable. He was paranoid, and he was very cruel. Now he was just like, how can I say this? Like, I don't know. He had this reputation. He'd killed his wife. He had killed some of his sons. He had killed other relatives. Anybody who it seemed might be vying for his spot, it was just off with their heads. And so for Joseph to have a dream about this guy coming to kill his son, this was not something that he would take lightly. It was within the reputation of Herod that something like this would happen. And I want to say, kind of before I get any farther, is that I was really praying last Sunday before church, as I was kind of just thinking ahead to today, imagining me doing this right now in front of all of you, and thinking, wow, God, is that the passage that you want me to speak on for hope? Because, that could be, maybe there's more hopeful passages in the Bible. And so I just kind of felt like I was kind of doing one of those, like, did you really say that you want me to speak on that? If there was like a little confirmation, I would be okay with that. And because when I think of hope, I think of like baby Jesus and yay, and this is more like just conspiracy and murder and crazy kings. And I've never actually seen an episode of Game of Thrones, but that's what I imagine Game of Thrones to be like. And so who was here last Sunday? Some of you? Okay, so for those of you who are not, I'm going to catch you up a little bit. Jared was closing out our series on giving or generosity, and he was answering some questions. And one of the questions was about immigration. And he started talking about this passage. He started talking about Jesus as a refugee, as a young child. And I was sitting right here with my friend, and I looked over to my friend Casey, and I said, oh, don't talk about that. I think I'm going to talk about that next week. And as soon as I said that, who remembers what happens? Do you remember what happened? His mic cut out. As soon as he started talking about it, and I said to my friend, oh, don't talk about that. I think that's what I'm going to talk about next week. Immediately his mic cut out, and then he said, somebody doesn't want me to talk about this. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm supposed to talk about. And so I just have to preface as we walk into this that I know there are some other passages we could use, but I really feel like God has something for us this morning in this one. That's a true story for those who are here. Okay. So Joseph wakes up, and I imagine he's just sitting there at the end of his bed. He's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And him and Mary having this, waking up, telling her about this dream, and kind of them just sitting there. And it reminds me of that. There's this old song by The Clash, and it's like, should I stay or should I go? It's like, if I go, there's going to be some trouble. But if I stay, it's going to be double. This is a lose-lose situation. It's not going to be good if you stay, but it's sure as heck not going to be good if you go either. And so they get up, and in the middle of the night, they flee. Under the cover of darkness, they slip out the back door, and they go. And the truth is, this is a story that happened 2,000 years ago, but there are millions of families right now that are faced with the same situation, right? Are they supposed to go, or are they supposed to stay? All over the world, there's persecution, religious, political, racial, ethnic, where families who are really caught in the middle of that, or individuals, have to make a really, really hard decision. And I think it's worth kind of thinking for Joseph and Mary and for other families around the world, what that looks like to decide to go. What is it that's so moving that it would cause you to just leave every single thing that you know and leave? And I think that you have to weigh kind of the fear versus the hope in that decision. There's the fear that if I stay, it's going to be bad, but the fear that if I go, it could be worse. There's the hope that maybe I'll stay and things do get better, but then there's that knowledge that I know that the only hope I have for things to get better is to leave. And I don't know, I think that hope can fill you. Fear can sustain you for a little while. Fear can get you out the door. Fear can keep you going till the adrenaline wears off. But if you go off of fear, it's going to run you down. Like the rubber on the tires is going to go to wire, and they're just going to stop. And you're not going to be able to move forward. There's, I said I have not watched Game of Thrones, but I have watched Hunger Games. This is something I have seen. And there's a quote in it saying that hope is the only thing that is stronger than fear. Romans 5:5 says, hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. This family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, they were gone for about 4 years-ish. That's kind of the historical guess. They traveled over 12,000 miles. That would have been like if instead of waking up this morning and coming to church, like you did in your cars, you got up in the middle of the night and took your family and by foot walked to Nashville. And then once you got there, you turned around and came back. Also, there was a large Jewish diaspora in Egypt at this time, but I think the key word here is diaspora. This is not their homeland. This is not their home country. And they were received well by some towns in Egypt, the historical records show us, but also there were other parts where they were just run out of town. There's like a whole trail you can kind of follow where they think the Holy Family went and came back. And they have these huge churches and monasteries built over the caves that it's believed that they slept in. This is not a river cruise. And so, yes, I think that when they wake up and they decide to leave, there is an element of fear for their lives, but fear is not going to sustain you through that. There has to be a hope to get you through a time like that. And so I think the question that we can answer, or at least look at, is in the situation like that, what do we have to hope in? And where the heck is God? Like, if we have this good God, then where is he? And here's the answer. He is here. He is with us. And he is with that young family who has to slip out the back door in the middle of the night. And he is with the father who is not sure how he's going to provide for his family. He is with the child who is sleeping outside or in a cave because there is no other home or bed for him to go to. He is with the young mother who is so far away from any home or family or support that she knows that she is just figuring out on her own and is pretty sure she's probably failing at it, even though she's not. He is there with the foreigner who is being treated like a foreigner in a foreign land. Now, I know that there are families in our church, in RCC right now, who imagining this is not a stretch. We have families and individuals in our church who have had to leave their native land to come here, either lottery, student or work visa, asylum, maybe their own midnight crossing. And I think that it's not a stretch to think about what that looks like, but for some of us, our Egypt could look really different than that. It's not so literal of a calling out, but it might look like a sudden death, an unexpected illness, maybe chronic pain, a heartbreaking divorce. Or maybe it's not that, maybe it's you finally have the marriage that you've prayed for years, but it's so much harder than you thought it was going to be. Maybe it is, maybe it's the parents who have spent 20 years raising their children, and then their children did exactly what they raised them to do, which is to move out and start lives of their own, but they have no idea what that means for their lives now. Or, maybe it's you've just got graduated and there's there's the student loans, but there's not the job. Or there's another financial hole that you're in, and it's so deep you have no idea how you can possibly climb out of it. The point is, we all have seasons where we are sent out into our own personal Egypt, and these seasons that are dry, and they just look hopeless, and we think, where is God? And I imagine Mary and Joseph had a similar thing of being like, did I do something wrong? Like, how did I get here? Like, is God mad at me? Like, is it something that I did? Because we were really obedient to all the things that God asked, I thought. And for Mary and Joseph, those were some pretty big asks, right? And here's the thing. Sometimes we don't know why we're sent out into the desert. We don't know why we are in these seasons that can last years. Kind of these own personal deserts. And we don't know. There's not a good answer sometimes. I mean, sometimes you can look back and you can see all of the things that God has done. But sometimes it's just, you're not going to know this side of heaven because we live in a broken world. And the promise really, it is not that all of those things will be resolved. It's the promise that all things will be reconciled through Jesus. But God can handle these conversations with you. God can handle the, where are you? Right? He can handle a little bit of you shaking your fist at him. There's Psalms, most of that is in there. There's also an entire book called Lamentations, if you need some company for kind of venting a little bit at God. And we have Jesus. Like, we see Jesus the night before he was betrayed. He goes out and he prays and he's like, God, like, where are you? What is happening? I don't want to do this. Is there another way? Can we do this some other way? And so I want to say, as we're talking about hope and as we're talking about these seasons, that I think that there sometimes is a pressure to have a little bit of like a grin and bear it, like everything's great, and that's a pressure from society, but that's not a pressure from God. Like, God doesn't say you have to smile and everything is great and that's your good representation of me. I just feel like I kind of want to say that and get that out of the way. Here's what I say to our girls. We have 3 girls, and, it's hard being a kid. It's hard being an adult, but it's really hard to be a kid, too. You're in this world, adults, and they make all the decisions, and you don't have much autonomy. And so I tell them, I'm like, listen, as your parent, I cannot make it so that sad or hard things don't happen to you. But I promise you that I will be with you through all of it, right here. No matter what happens, I'm going to stand right here with you through it. And church, that's God's promise to us too. Bad things happen, hard things happen, dry seasons come. He says that. He says, in this world you will have suffering, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Because he has overcome the world, we can hold to that promise of hope that he is with us through all of it. The prosperity gospel tells you that if you hold on, everything turns out fine and it's great. But this is not the prosperity gospel. This is the gospel of Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us. That is what we put our hope into, church. I want to say that here's the thing with hope. It is a choice. As Tim said, we have, when we're in that season and in our every day, we have the choice. Do we hold on to the promise of God with us, of Emmanuel? Or do we not? It really is. It is a choice. It sounds too simple. It sounds too basic. It sounds too like Christian, I guess you could say. But it is true. And I know that I have been in seasons where I have not held on to my hope. And I have gone on fear or many other things. And it has not ended up well. Because what you hold on to in that space is you can hold on to angerness. There's a lot of angerness sometimes with God and the things that he puts us through, people. I feel like that's something that my 5-year-old would say when I make her do something she doesn't want to do. She might get real angerness at me. That's a very parent thing we make our children do. Okay, wait, I digress with angerness. Okay, and so, it's a choice. It's a choice to believe in that promise that he's with us. It's a choice to believe that there is nothing that can separate us from his love. It is a choice to believe, like those songs that we sung today, that because of what happened on the cross, that God has overcome the world. This season of Advent, it is that season of waiting. We know that Christ has come. We know kind of in our heads what he has done and what's that supposed to mean for our hearts and all salvation and all that. But also, as a church, we are in a season of waiting, that season of Egypt, and it's been 2,000 years. That's a long season. And so in that place, in that 2,000 church history years of Egypt, as a people and as a church, we hope. We choose and hope. And sometimes that hope, like families who are coming to this country from somewhere else, the hope is for the next generation. So many families, they'll come and they'll know that maybe, they're not going to get that sort of big American dream, but their children might. And so we choose to hope, well, we're in this in-between. Whatever that season looks like for us, we put our hope in Jesus. Here's the invitation for us this morning. church. The invitation is, I think, to acknowledge that the next 3 to 4 weeks are probably not going to look like a Christmas movie, regardless of what you put on your Instagram. It's not. Our lives are not Christmas movies. I cannot even get my 5-year-old to wear shoes to church. It's been like 6 weeks. The girl with no shoes is mine. And that is okay. It is good because then she doesn't have angerness towards me for making her wear shoes. It's to know that the holidays are hard, that our families are hard, that they can be lonely, that there is so much pressure to get all the things. If you have kids, to put under the tree, and if not, to do all the things and wear all the things and go to all the parties. It's so full. But that is not what this season of waiting is about. It's about this. And so this morning, I want you guys to stand, and we're just going to receive the invitation this morning to hope in what God has for us, because we don't have to put our hope in families or relationships or marriages or jobs. Those things are not bad, but they're also not very dependable. And so this morning, we have time just to kind of extend. I feel like that worship this morning was so powerful and so freeing, just to worship God for who he is and what he's done. And I feel like we have time this morning to kind of just receive more of what God has for us in that space. And so what we do at this point of the service, and we do this every week, unless Jared goes way over on his talk, and then he has to pray for everyone in one covering. But I'm pretty sure I skipped a whole page in here. I just can't find it. So we have time. I looked. I'm like, I know I've got something else. Where did that go? So we have time to pray. We have time to receive God. Maybe I feel like there's a few things. Like, I think there are people where you are sitting on this like kind of edge on the rise, and you see Egypt in front of you. And you know you're about to walk into it, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. Or maybe you're in the middle of it, and it feels like you're looking around saying, God, where are you? Like, I know you're supposed to be here, but I sure as heck don't see you or feel you anywhere. And maybe you're on the other side and you can look back at that desert and you can see how God was with you every step of the way, even when you didn't know it. I think about the passage in the road to Emmaus where after Jesus died, the disciples, this is the lowest time. Jesus has just died. They don't know he's risen. And they're on the road and they're talking about it and they're just like leaving. Like, what do they do? And Jesus comes up beside them and he is with them the whole time, walking until he gets there. And it's not until they're off the road, till they get to the house where they're going and they break bread with him, that they realize it's Jesus. And they say, oh my gosh, he was with us on the road the whole time? Did our hearts not burn within us? And so where are you? Where do you need your hope? And so if you just want to, this is how we do it at RCC, is we have people who are trained as prayer ministers who can pray for you. And if you'd like to receive hope, you can come up and they will pray for you. But this is also something that you can do right where you are. We have a couple minutes just to sit here and open our hearts to God and say, God, I don't want to walk in to that desert. I know you're calling me into it and I don't want to walk in it, but if I have to go, I'm only going to go if you're with me. Or to thank him for the desert that he's walked you through. And so I invite you at this time, come forward if you want prayer, or to spend a minute at your seat, just receiving God, receiving the hope that he has as we wait for this Advent season. If our prayer ministers would come forward, and anyone else who'd like prayer.